Hey guys, it's Christopher. Welcome to another Solarus tutorial about creating Zelda-like games in 2 dimensions. So in this video I will explain how to create a sprite and how to use the Sprite editor in general. I should open the quest first maybe. Okay, so you probably already have a lot of sprites in your quest, and you can see, for example, this villager sprite used by a character. So a sprite is basically a collection of animated GIFs, animated images. Okay, so and they are organized in what we call animations. So this sprite has 2 animations, stopped and walking. And then every animation is divided in several directions. And every direction is itself again divided in several frames. In this case, only 1 frame for the stopped animation, but 2 frames for the walking animation. Okay, and you have this preview section here to directly see the result. And you have some properties about the animation. So the walking animation uses this PNG file and this frame delay, so same frame delay for all direction, and you can decide if it should loop or stop at the end. And when a direction is selected, you also have direction specific properties. So this means essentially the position and the number of frames of your direction. Okay. So let's try to create a new sprite from this PNG file. So if you read the description of this video, you will find an archive to download. Where is it? Just 1 second. Okay, and okay. Resources for if you want to reproduce this tutorial, just download it, extract, and you have a sprite folder with tom.png. Put this in your quest. Here. In your quest, yes, in sprites, NPC, non-playing character. And I also put some HUD files here. We'll see this very quickly at the end of the episode, just to show that sprites can be used not only to represent characters, enemies, the hero, and in general entities of the map, like a bush, a chest, and so on, but also for anything that you want to directly show on the screen, like the HUD, the heart display. But okay, let's start with a character here. So I assume that you have a PNG of your very nice pixel art, or some pixel art from an existing game, I don't know. Here it's a PNG sprite sheet from Zelda Mystery of Solarus DX. It's not a Zelda character, but it's really in the same style. So Solarus accepts any PNG file. It can be indexed or RGB, and it also directly supports transparency. So if you don't want a white background or black background, or I don't know, behind your character, just set the color to transparency with your favorite image editor. The PNG format already supports transparency, and Solarus just respects that. So there is no special color that would be replaced at runtime by transparency, because there is no need for such a mechanism. You can already do transparency in PNG files. So okay, I have my file, and I actually have displayed this grid of 24 by 32 to better understand each frame. Okay, so once you have that, you can create a sprite in the editor. No sprite. It's called Tom, this guy. So this is an empty sprite. You can then create some animations. The first one will be called stopped. And as you can see, the sprite editor is very clever, because it automatically suggested, detected that there is a PNG file with the exact same name as the sprite. So it suggested it here. You can change it if it's not correct, of course. But okay, we have an animation, and for now it has no directions. To create a direction, you can click create direction here, but you can also, and it's easier, do like in the tileset editor. You draw a rectangle here, and you can create a direction. But let's draw a grid of 24 by 32 again, to better see the frames. So okay, stopped will be a direction, an animation with only one frame for each direction. So this is the first one. And the convention is in Solarus is always that 0 means right, and then you turn counterclockwise, like in trigonometry. So 0 is right, 1 is up, 2 is left, and 3 is down, for a 4-direction system, always. Yeah, so direction 0. We can create, so if you followed, we should now create the north direction, the up direction, oops. So you can do it like this, new direction, or you can also just duplicate this one, if you drag it like this with your mouse, and then duplicate here. But first I have to set the correct origin property of my sprite. So what is this? The origin is very important. You should always set the origin by convention to more or less the feet of your character here. So it should be here rather than the center. It is always the case for characters here. Same for the hero, same for enemies. By the way, the hero has a lot of animations here, but the origin is always... So actually the convention is always to put the origin, the x value should be half of the width, and the y value should be the bottom of the sprite minus 3 pixels, assuming that the frame ends here, ends there is no transparent part, larger transparent part below, because it's the case of time. So when you have complicated sprites like the sword, okay, bad example, sword loading, no. Okay, okay, this one. Here the origin is still 1221, because there is a transparent part below. But why am I bothering you with the origin? It's very important because 29. So this value -3 in this example. The origin is necessary to synchronize objects that have different sizes, basically. Because when you create a map, I will at least duplicate the direction here. Okay, I have my 4 directions. I will do the walking animation later. But when you create a map, when you create, I mean, a character on the map, so this is to create a non-playing character. We'll see them in more details in a next episode, but just put the sprite of your non-playing character, Tom. Okay, and as you can see, so the green box here is the actual collision box used to detect obstacles and just also to talk with the character. So what I mean by that is that I can overlap the sprite here. So all of this is to explain that the sprite can be larger than the actual entity box here. And how does the engine know that the relative position of the sprite and the collision box should be like this? It is thanks to the origin point. For example, if I set the origin point to a very bad value, like 0, 0, and I reopen the map, okay, the collision box hasn't moved, but now the origin of the sprite is 0, 0, so it's simply not correctly synchronized with the entity box. The origin of the entities box is respects actually the same convention. So this is a 16 by 16 square, so the origin is 8 by 13, and so this is why the sprite starts here. The sprite is a rectangle like this. Okay, so very important. The engine cannot guess for you the correct origin point. It just depends on how you want to show the sprite relative to its entity. It's also useful for complicated sprites that have several animations of different sizes. If I see the hero again, oh, it's here. For example, this one has not the same size as this one, and they are correctly synchronized because the origin point is always here in this feed. Actually, the center of his shadow, more exactly. So this is a convention you have to respect. So usually half of the width and height -3. Okay. And why did I choose the convention of the shadow here? Because the origin point is also used for something which seems very natural, but is not that simple. The hero here overlaps I mean the sprite of the hero overlaps the sprite of the character, and the hero is displayed above, but if I go north of him, I'm now displayed below him. And the exact point where this changes is here, and it's just the engine just uses the origin point of both. It compares the origin point of both to decide which one should be displayed before. So as far as the engine is concerned, this origin point is the real coordinates of the entity. Anyway, okay. So I hope you understand the origin point better now. Let's create the walking animation. And one other detail, if your animations are exactly called like this, stopped and walking, then the engine will recognize them for non-playing characters. And for example, as soon as you move the non-playing character, it will take the correct walking animation and the correct direction also, but we will see that. Okay, walking. So let's start with the right again, new direction. Actually, the size should still be, size of one frame should still be 2432, but now I have 2 frames. So let's say we have 2 frames, and when there are several frames, when there are several frames, 22, 24, yeah. You specify the first one, and then you say how many frames you have. And then the engine creates it from the left to the right, and then from top to bottom. And goes to the next row when the number of columns here is reached. So if you put only 1 column, it will be like this, so it's not what you want. 2 columns. Okay. The frame delay should be, I think, 200. That's what I did for the other ones. Stopped and walking 200. Okay. And we loop on frame 0, which is the first frame. You can also make sprites that do not loop, and they will just disappear after the last frame is finished. So they will just stop being shown. You can try that if you want. Duplicate. So for the up direction, 4 columns, 4 frames. Let's duplicate this one and this one. Okay, so I think we should be good, except that I forgot to set the right origin point. $24.29. No, you can see that it's wrong here. Always the center of the shadow. If you know Multimedia Fusion or the Games Factory, it's actually very similar in the Sprite editor. There is the same organization. A sprite is divided in animations, and then in directions, and then in frames. And there is also this origin point idea. It has different names there. It's called the hotspot, if I remember correctly. Okay, working should be fine. Let's see how it looks. Okay, good. So when an animation only has 1 frame, the delay and you don't want, and you want it to loop. Actually, if you put the special value 0 in the delay here, it means that it lasts forever. It's the same as looping on frame 0 with a normal delay. And if you put a delay here, and then if you don't loop, the sprite will last just the duration of 1 frame, and then will stop being shown. But okay. In general, you just, when you have 1 frame like this and you want it to continue, you just let the default parameters. The frame delay of 0 actually works. It's a special value. And it implies that the sprite loops. Okay. So we don't know, we haven't made a tutorial yet about how to move a character, but it will come very soon, and then we'll make enemies. But you can already press the action key here, which is space by default, to see the different directions of your sprite, of the stopped animation. So no walking animation yet, but you can see the directions of the stopped animation, because non-playing characters react when, and they turn to you when you talk to them. Okay. So, and one more thing, I've also put in the archive to download with this tutorial an empty heart sprite. It's actually for the heart display of the HUD, the head-up display. Empty heart. We won't make a HUD. We won't display any hearts in this episode, but I just wanted to highlight that sprites are really just images. To give them life in a map, you have to associate a sprite to an entity. Okay, but you can also use a sprite without any entity and directly display it on the screen with some code, and we'll see how to do that one day. But yeah, you should not confuse entities and sprite. This is an entity that has a sprite, but the sprite itself can be used even without any entity. In this example of sprite, you can see it is actually used to display hearts on the screen in Zelda Mystery of Solarus DX. So most of the time like this sprite is repeated for the number of maximum hearts the player has, and then there is another sprite here to show the current number of hearts. So this is used as a background, and this represents the actual hearts. Okay. And it's a sprite and not just a simple image, because it can be animated sometimes in Zelda Mystery of Solarus DX. We did it like this. When the player has a low life level, the heart background is actually animated like this to show the danger with the repetitive sound that you all must love if you played Zelda. It's this. Okay. You get the idea. So again, we won't use this sprite in this tutorial, but I just wanted to really make it clear that sprites can be used on map entities, but also directly on the screen without entity. Okay, if you have any question, feel free to ask, and don't forget to like the video. It always motivates us. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Bye.